The wind whispered that night like it knew something no one else did. The trees stood still, yet the air felt thick with movement, like time itself had paused. It was supposed to be an ordinary evening. You were supposed to walk down the same road, pass by the same bakery, wave at the same old man who always sat outside his house counting sparrows. But that night, something changed. Something shifted. And in that brief, almost imperceptible pause in reality, fate rewrote your story. The call came in just after midnight. Are you sitting down? You thought it was a joke at first. A prank. But then came the words that made your heart stop beating for a moment. There's been an accident. But it wasn't you. Someone else. They were where you were supposed to be. You couldn't breathe. Not fully. Not like before. They described the clothes. Identical to what you wore earlier that day. The spot, the exact bench you usually sat on every Thursday at 7 p.m. And the face? Too charred to recognize. But the necklace? The exact same one you'd lost 2 days ago. On that bench. The dead took your place.
But why?
You replayed everything. Every decision. Every delay. Every hesitation. Had you forgotten something that day? Had you stopped to tie your shoe? Had someone called your name just as you were about to cross the street? Yes. A voice. You now remember it. Soft, urgent, unfamiliar. Wait. One word. That's all. You turned. But no one was there. And yet, it bought you a minute. Enough for fate to redirect its path. But why would anyone step into your death? What force decided you should live? It wasn't long before you began to notice strange things. Dreams that weren't yours. Memories that didn't belong to you. You woke up humming a song you'd never heard before. You recognized places you'd never been to. And worst of all, you started craving foods you used to hate. You were becoming someone else. Or perhaps they were becoming you. Because when the dead take your place, they don't just vanish. Sometimes they stay. Watching. Whispering. Waiting. You saw them once, or so you thought. A figure on the edge of the crowd during a funeral. Eyes that didn't blink. A face that almost mirrored yours, but not quite. A silent nod, like an unfinished goodbye. From that moment on, something followed you. Not evil. Not good. Just there. In mirrors. In reflections. In photos you didn't remember taking. Everyone called it trauma. Survivor's guilt. Stress. You laughed with them, agreed with them. But deep down, you knew this was different. Because when you escape death, death doesn't forget. And neither do the ones who met it on your behalf. You started feeling things. Like a storm about to break loose under your skin. You felt watched even when you were alone. You heard footsteps when there was no one home. And sometimes you even felt your heart skip, not out of fear, but as if it remembered another rhythm. A rhythm that belonged to a heart no longer beating. Was it chance? Coincidence? Or was your survival orchestrated by something older, darker, or maybe even divine? They say souls travel. That unfinished business brings spirits back. But what if the soul that took your place never intended to leave? What if your survival was never the end of the story, but the beginning? And just when you begin to accept that you were saved, something happens. Something unexpected. Before the accident, life had been simple. At least, that's what you told yourself. You were just another face in the crowd, moving from one task to the next. A quiet observer, a person who preferred to blend in. There was comfort in the routine, in the predictability.
Work.
Home.
Coffee.
A book before bed. But you had always been different from those around you. Deep down you knew it. Even in childhood you sensed it. It wasn't the usual feeling of wanting to stand out. It wasn't ego. It was something far deeper. A sense of knowing. You didn't have an extraordinary gift. No visions, no ability to predict the future. But there was an eerie clarity that often crept into your thoughts. A whisper on the edge of your awareness that things were never as they seemed. Growing up, you were the quiet one. Not the shy type, more like the observant type. You watched people's eyes. You listened to their words, but also to the ones they never said. People revealed a lot more about themselves than they realized, and you knew what to listen for. Your family? They had always been supportive, but distant in their own way. Your father, A man of few words, spent his days in a quiet, disciplined routine. He never really spoke much about his past, but you could sense it. It hung in the air like an unspoken rule. Your mother, on the other hand, was warm, but her smiles always felt like they were hiding something. As if she knew something you didn't. Maybe she did. Your best friend, Emma, was the opposite of you. She was vibrant, outgoing, a lover of life. Her laughter was infectious, and her energy seemed to fill every space she entered. You were drawn to her immediately when you met in college. She was the spark to your calm, the force to your stillness. And for a time, you were inseparable. But as time passed, you noticed something unsettling. Emma's energy wasn't always as genuine as it appeared. Her bright eyes, always scanning the room, always waiting for the next thing. Were they watching you too? There were moments, fleeting, where you felt a strange tension in her gaze. It was almost as if she was studying you, learning you, preparing for something. You laughed it off. It was just your mind, running wild. Emma was your best friend. She would never betray you. Or would she? It was after your accident that the memories began to resurface. You hadn't thought much about the small things, the odd little behaviors Emma displayed, the times she lingered around when you'd been emotionally fragile, the moments where her words seemed to cut a little deeper than they should have. It was all buried beneath the shock of survival. But now, as you found yourself facing the aftermath of what should have been your death, those memories crept back like shadows in the corner of your mind. You remembered one instance not long before the accident. You had been sitting at the cafe, watching the rain tap against the window as Emma spoke about her latest adventure, her trip to a place you had always dreamed of visiting. She described the streets, the colors, the warmth of the sun. But as she spoke, you could see a glimmer of something else behind her eyes, a flicker of something darker, almost knowing. Imagine if we could just swap places, Emma had joked, her tone light, but there was a glint of something else in her voice, something you couldn't quite place at the time. You could live the dream, and I could, well, stay here and settle down. You laughed it off, shaking your head. That's ridiculous. But as the days passed, the words lingered in your mind. You pushed them away, burying them beneath your responsibilities. But now, in the wake of everything that happened, you wondered, had it been a joke? Or was it a subtle warning? A message from someone who knew exactly what was about to happen? Emma, for all her extroverted energy, had always carried a certain intensity. She was a planner, a fixer, a problem solver. You admired her for it, but deep down, you sometimes wondered if that intensity hid a desire for control. Perhaps it wasn't the world she wanted to control, but people. And when it came to you, maybe she had seen something you hadn't. Maybe she knew that your life, your choices, were leading you down a dangerous path. Maybe she had a hand in making sure that, when the time came, someone would be there to take your place. As the days passed after the accident, you began to piece together the moments, the conversations, the little signs that had gone unnoticed before. The way Emma had acted the day before your accident, how she had been unusually insistent that you go for a walk in the park. She'd insisted it would help clear your mind. She'd even offered to come with you, but you had declined. You were fine. But what if she wasn't fine? What if this was part of something bigger? Something you hadn't seen, but she had? Now the questions piled on. The guilt, the disbelief, the unease. Emma's presence felt like a shadow at the back of your mind, and you couldn't shake it. You had survived. But someone else hadn't. And as much as you wanted to believe that it was all just a coincidence, a twist of fate, a cruel game of chance, something told you otherwise. Was it Emma who had taken your place? Was she the one who had orchestrated this strange turn of events? Or was it something even darker, something far beyond your understanding, that had intervened to make sure you lived? It wasn't until the third week after the accident that the truth began to feel like a weight pressing down on your chest. You should have been dead. You had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. A mistake of fate, the doctors had called it. An impossible recovery. But you did recover. And every day since, it had felt as though the world around you had shifted. You weren't sure who you were anymore, or worse, who was supposed to be standing in your shoes. You hadn't told anyone yet. Not even Emma. But you couldn't stop the gnawing suspicion that something wasn't right. Emma had been strangely distant since the accident, her bright energy replaced by a quiet coldness. She wasn't the same friend who had laughed with you for hours, shared secrets, and supported your every decision. No, this Emma was different. The spark you once felt when she walked into a room seemed to flicker, almost as if it was dimming. And then there was her behavior after the accident. Emma had been the one to visit you most frequently during your recovery, but something was off about her visits. She came with a pleasant smile, but it never reached her eyes. Her voice, once so full of excitement, now felt hollow, almost rehearsed. You remembered a conversation you had just days ago. It had started innocently enough, the two of you sitting in the living room, talking about how you were adjusting to being back at home. "You look so much better, you know," she said, her smile not quite meeting her eyes. "I'm really glad you're okay." "Yeah, it's crazy, right? I don't even remember the accident." Emma's gaze shifted slightly, and her smile faltered just a fraction of a second too long.
Right.
I mean, it's a miracle, honestly. Sometimes I think we just take our lives for granted, you know? Her words had made you pause. You had sensed something in her tone, something off about her perspective. The way she said it, the emphasis on we. You had always taken your life for granted, hadn't you? But had she always felt that way about her life, too? It wasn't just the words. It was the way she looked at you now.
It was as if she were studying you.
As if she were searching for something in your expression. But when you tried to dig deeper, to ask her if something was wrong, she only deflected, brushing off your concerns with a laugh and a change of subject. It wasn't long before strange things began happening. Little things, like how she had been too eager to help you with everything. At first, it seemed sweet. She'd offer to pick up your groceries, check on your prescriptions, bring you food at odd hours. But soon, her assistance felt less like kindness and more like control. One evening, after a long day of lying in bed, you walked into your kitchen to find Emma standing there, meticulously organizing your cabinet. She looked up with that same disarming smile, as if nothing was wrong. "Just tidying up a bit," she said casually, even though it was after 10 p.m. and you hadn't asked for her help. "Emma, I'm fine," you had said, a note of discomfort creeping into your voice. "You don't have to do everything for me. I can manage." Her smile wavered, just for a moment, before it returned full force. "Of course. Just thought you might like some help. You've been through a lot. I'm just looking out for you." It wasn't the first time she had said something like that. And it wasn't the first time you had felt like something wasn't adding up. There was an intensity in her eyes, a burning focus that made you uneasy. The more you thought about it, the more you realized that Emma seemed to be taking on the role of your caretaker, your guardian. Not just a friend, but someone who had inserted herself into your life in a way that felt invasive. The tension had been building for days, but it finally reached its peak the night you found the journal. It was an old leather-bound book that had been lying on your nightstand for months. It wasn't unusual. You wrote in journals frequently, especially when life was chaotic. But this particular journal had been unopened for a long time. The night of the accident, you hadn't had the chance to write in it. You were still gathering your thoughts, still reeling from the suddenness of it all. But tonight, as you reached for it, something about the weight of the book felt wrong. You opened the cover and froze. The first few pages were filled with words that didn't seem familiar. The handwriting was elegant, neat, but it wasn't yours. It was her handwriting. The first entry read, "She doesn't know yet, but she will soon. It will all make sense in time. When it does, she'll understand why this had to happen. Why I had to take her place." Your heart stopped. You flipped through the pages, the words growing more disturbing with each entry. Emma's thoughts, her plans, her intentions, laid out in front of you like a twisted roadmap. She hadn't just been there for you. She had been waiting for this. In her journal, Emma had written about your accident, the moment she had realized that the opportunity had presented itself. She detailed everything. How she had made sure that you would be the one to face the danger, how she had known it was her chance to take over. But the most chilling part came near the end of the journal. There, in cold, deliberate writing, was a final entry. I didn't think she would survive. I was ready to step in. But now that she has, things will be different. She will never know what's truly happening. She will never see me for who I am. And in the end, I will have everything I've ever wanted. You slammed the journal shut, your mind spinning. Every inch of your body screamed in panic. How had you missed this? How had you been so blind to what was right in front of you? The truth was undeniable now. Emma had never been your friend in the way you had believed. She had manipulated, planned, and carefully constructed this game. As you sat there, the weight of everything crashing down, you realized the depth of your dilemma. Emma was no longer just a friend. She was a predator, a person who had orchestrated your near-death experience and planned to take over your life in your place. The tension had been building to this moment. The calm facade that Emma had maintained was starting to crack, and with it, the realization that she was now your greatest threat. The question that remained was, what would you do now? The night air felt cold against your skin, as if the world itself had been plunged into a chilling silence. It was strange how everything seemed so still after everything you had just learned. Emma's journal lay in your hands, a horrifying confession staring back at you. The realization sank deep into your bones, and the weight of the situation was unbearable. You had been a pawn in Emma's game, a piece she had carefully maneuvered. You had trusted her, loved her like a sister, and now she was nothing but a stranger in your life. You couldn't comprehend it. The betrayal hurt, but even more than that was the gnawing fear. What was she going to do next? Was she going to make her move now that she knew you were awake? Or would she try to hide behind her mask of friendship a little longer? Your thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a knock at the door. You froze. Your heart raced. The knock was soft but deliberate. Your mind instantly raced to the most obvious conclusion, Emma. She was coming to finish what she had started. The thought sent a chill through you, but you couldn't let her win. You couldn't let her continue the lie any longer. You had to face her.
And you had to do it now.
The knock came again, louder this time. You knew it was her. You had no more time to think. Slowly, you stood, the journal clenched tightly in your hands, as though it were the only thing keeping you grounded. Each step toward the door felt heavier than the last, the weight of what was about to happen pressing down on you. When you opened the door, there she was. Emma stood in the doorway, her eyes soft and wide, that same fake smile plastered on her face. But this time, you saw through it. You saw the mask she had been wearing for months. You saw the person who had been lurking behind the facade, the one who had been plotting and manipulating you all along. Hey, she greeted you, her voice warm, but you could hear the slightest quiver in her tone. I thought I'd come by. How are you feeling? You didn't answer right away. Instead, you stepped aside and gestured for her to come in. She hesitated for a moment, but then walked past you, her eyes quickly scanning the room. You could feel her unease, the way she was pretending to be casual, but her every move betrayed her anxiety. You closed the door behind her, and for a long moment, neither of you spoke. The tension in the room was thick, almost suffocating. It was the calm before the storm, the moment before everything came crashing down. You took a deep breath, and then finally broke the silence. Why? You asked, your voice barely above a whisper. Why did you do it, Emma? Why did you try to take my life? Emma's eyes flickered with surprise, but she quickly recovered. I don't know what you mean, she said, her voice steady but strained. What are you talking about? You held up the journal.
This.
I found it. Every word you've written. Your plans. Your lies. You wanted me to die, didn't you? For a brief moment, Emma froze. The color drained from her face, her smile faltering. She looked at the journal, then back at you, her eyes wide with panic. She opened her mouth as if to speak but then closed it, her mind racing to find an excuse, a way out. You're not supposed to know, she said quietly, her voice almost a whisper. I didn't want you to find out this way. The words hit you like a slap. The realization of how deeply her betrayal ran settled in like a cold, heavy weight. You had been nothing but a pawn in her twisted game. I didn't think you would survive, she continued, her voice trembling slightly. But when you woke up, it changed everything. I had to adapt. I didn't know what to do anymore. I thought, maybe if I could make it seem like nothing was wrong, you'd never suspect me. Her confession hung in the air, a heavy, suffocating truth. But even now, there was something in her eyes that unsettled you even more. It wasn't regret. It wasn't guilt. It was fear. Why me, Emma? You asked, your voice trembling with emotion. What did I ever do to you? Emma hesitated, glancing at the floor, then back up at you. You were everything I wanted to be. You had everything. People loved you. You were always the center of attention, always surrounded by friends. And me? She shook her head. I was always the one in the background. Invisible. People never really saw me.
They saw you.
They loved you. Her words were bitter, laced with a jealousy that burned hot and sharp. You had always known Emma to be a quiet, supportive friend, but now it became clear how much resentment had festered beneath the surface. I thought, if I could take your place, if I could be you, I'd finally be happy. I thought it would solve everything. I was wrong, though. I didn't expect you to survive. She laughed darkly. But now that you have, I don't know what to do. The truth of her confession hit you like a punch to the gut. Emma had been consumed by envy, so much so that she had plotted your demise, all for the sake of living a life she thought would bring her happiness. But it was clear now, nothing would ever satisfy her. Not even your life. I trusted you, you said softly, the weight of the betrayal settling deep in your chest. I thought you were my friend, but now,
I don't even recognize you.
There was a long silence, and for a brief moment, you thought Emma might break. She looked at you, her eyes softening for the first time since this conversation began. But then, that mask returned. You don't understand, she said quickly, her voice rising. This is what I had to do. I couldn't let you ruin everything I wanted. The finality in her tone was chilling. You had never seen her like this before. This wasn't the Emma you knew. This was someone else entirely, someone driven by obsession, by need, and by a twisted sense of entitlement. But as you stood there, staring at her, you realized that you weren't the victim anymore. You weren't the one trapped in her game. You had the power now. Taking a deep breath, you stepped forward, closing the distance between the two of you. I don't know who you are anymore, you said quietly, but I'm done. I'm taking my life back. Emma's eyes flashed with something dark, something dangerous. She took a step back, her face contorting in frustration. You think you can just walk away from this? She hissed. You can't. It's too late for that. But you didn't flinch. You didn't back down.
No, Emma.
It's not too late. Not for me. Not anymore. There was a long, tense moment, the two of you standing face to face. You could feel the weight of the situation pressing on your chest, but you stood tall. You had learned everything you needed to know. You had the truth. And the truth was the only weapon you needed. With that, you turned and walked toward the door, but as you reached for the handle, Emma's voice called out to you one last time. You're making a mistake, she said, her voice trembling. You can't just leave. You can't just forget everything I've done for you. You didn't look back. You opened the door and stepped out into the cold night, feeling the air rush past you as if you were shedding your past, your doubts, and your fears. For the first time in what felt like forever, you were free. You had confronted the darkness, and now it was time to move on. You didn't need Emma's validation. You didn't need her approval. All you needed was yourself. And that, you realized, was enough. As you stand there, the cool night air sweeping across your face, you can feel the weight of everything that has transpired. It's a bittersweet victory, one that comes with the sting of betrayal but also the clarity that comes with reclaiming your power. There's no going back now. The door to your past is closed, and a new chapter waits ahead. The truth has a way of revealing itself when the time is right. It can be painful and jarring, but it also brings clarity. And now that you've faced the harshest of truths, you can't help but wonder, what does this mean for you moving forward? How do you take the pieces of yourself that have been shattered and rebuild a life that's truly yours? The journey you've just walked was not an easy one. But in the end, you've come out stronger, wiser, and more in control of your own destiny. You've learned that people may betray you, twist your reality, and try to destroy the very essence of who you are. But they cannot take away your strength, your resilience, or the truth that lives within you. And while this chapter may be over, the road ahead is still yours to choose. The future is full of possibilities, new relationships, new beginnings, and a new version of yourself that's ready to rise. Will you let fear or doubt hold you back, or will you embrace the lessons of the past and step boldly into your future?
You don't have to have all the answers right now.
But one thing is certain, you're not the person you were before. You've learned to stand tall in the face of darkness, to fight for yourself when everything seemed lost. And that alone is a victory worth celebrating. So, what's next? What will you do now that you've faced the truth? The choice is yours. It always has been. The angels watch over you, guiding you every step of the way, reminding you that no matter what happens next, you are never alone. You have the strength within you to create a life filled with peace, joy, and the love you deserve. And with each new day, you'll find that the past becomes less of a burden and more of a lesson, one that will guide you towards something brighter. Now, take a deep breath, let go of what no longer serves you, and trust in the future that's waiting. You've earned the right to be happy. You've earned the right to move on. The journey continues,